I'd like to call to order the Aquifer Protection Agency regular meeting, October 24th, here at the Chamber, and Pledge of Allegiance.
Fire evacuation.
After the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, that's right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, fire evacuation. In case of a fire, there's two ways to exit. To my left, through the chamber doors, and take another left, go down the stairs, or to the rear, and you can go right out the back. Okay, Secretary, please roll.
Yes. Present.
Linda DeGray.
Here.
John Petrino is here. Frank Alamo.
Here.
Joseph Muley.
Here.
Kenneth Alinsky.
Here.
Vinnie Grillo.
Here.
Christian D'Antonio.
Here.
And Walter Frizzell.
Here.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for the minutes of September 26th.
So moved. Second.
Any comments, corrections? No? All in favor? Aye.
I abstain.
And one,
I'll be abstaining as well.
two
I'll be abstaining.
abstentions.
Same.
3 abstentions. Okay, so it's 5-4, 3 abstain. There's no enforcement report. This time, anyone in the public would like to come forth? Anything that's on the agenda or not on the agenda? Okay, seeing no one in the audience to participate, I close public participation. New business. Georgie, would you like to chime in here?
Sure. Okay, so I'm not sure if the applicant is here. I can't see the audience.
Georgie, we got one thing
This is,
before that.
The last aquifer registration.
We've got one more thing.
Oh, yes, I do. I'm so sorry. I'm ahead of myself. So our newest planner, Stephen Heine, who you've met previously, he has completed his aquifer protection certification, and I would like to recommend to the motion to also adopt him as your second aquifer agent. So he may join me on aquifer stuff and inspections and, moving forward.
Except Steve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right. Okay,
Thank you.
welcome. Yay. Okay.
Our condolences.
ARA 32 Aquifer Protection registration renewal for 113 North Maple Street for grandfathered activities.
Yes, ARA number 132, Aquifer Protection Registration Renewal, 113 North Maple Street, grandfather activities for inactive activities of B, C, and X. WE 113 North Maple Street, LLC owners, map 82, lot 4, I-1 zone.
Okay, Georgie, you're on. Or Stephen.
Back on
Either
track. So Stephen and I did an inspection at this site a couple days ago. This is probably the cleanest warehouse I have ever inspected for this program. There are no violations found, no recommendations. They have proper authorization for public sewer, for their existing mop floor drains within the building. So this is the last business that exists over the Enfield Aquifer Protection Area that is coming in for a registration renewal. On my memo, in the image on the first page, you'll see all these purple parcel lines. You can still make out the old parcel of 97 North Maple right at the southeast corner of the building. Because that parcel was originally registered under Aquifer Registration Area number 3 by Leland Hawthorne Trucking Company before 2008, the grandfather status now applies to the whole parcel because it's been merged. So I have been working with Deep on this parcel with Adam Winstanley and Val Farrow and Ken Grant and Rose, and trying to get the property registered. We were just waiting for construction to be finished for the tenants to figure out all of their things and get their materials and B&Ps in order. So this is the last one here before you tonight. The activities remain grandfathered even though they are not being conducted. There was one comment from Deep about why the tenant has motor oil on site, but they do not conduct truck or maintenance repairs. In fact, that oil is scheduled to leave their site to go to a different location for the trucks. So there are no concerns or issues with the property, and I hope the agency can concur with me and we can approve this, and I can send out the list to Deep in the morning. Thank you.
Okay, and if the applicant would like to come in and give us any more details than we already just got, please. Name and address, please.
Is this on?
It is.
Valerie Farrow, President of Good Earth Advisors, representing the applicant, and with me is Ken Grant. He's a Senior Vice President of Winstanley, and this guy here manages all of Winstanley's assets. So I'm not sure that you folks have met him before, so we wanted to make the trip up, and he came in. And so it's because of Ken and Rosa is why the facilities for Winstanley are the way they are, have impeccable standards, and I think we really appreciate all the work that Georgie has done. It's taken us a while just to get some things together. We were kind of busy with the facility, just getting it up operation. Then the tenants moved in, and there was just lots of stuff. And poor Georgie just kept at it. And we're like, yeah, soon, soon, soon. And, you know, I work in a lot of towns. And I think you guys are really blessed to have staff the way you do, because not everybody is really conscientious and willing to stick with things to get things done the right way. So we really wanted to take the opportunity to say that. And we would, of course, appreciate a vote just to have that registration in our pocket. I think, you know, you have no intentions of changing tenants or doing anything.
They're both there for another 15, well, they're both 15-year tenants, so.
Yeah,
nothing's going
yeah.
anywhere.
Yeah, so I think we're very, very confident that we'll continue with the operations and keeping things clean and adhering to all the aquifer protection regs.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Ken?
I don't have a question, but I just want to tell you I was very impressed with your materials management plan.
Oh, thank you very much.
It was very detailed, and it looked like it covered just about everything, and I'm sure it did, because Georgie makes sure that. Yeah.
One of the tenants is really safety
Yeah,
conscious.
it was very interesting reading and very comprehensive, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? No?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a recommendation or a motion to approve ARA 32, Aquifer Protection Registration Renewal for 113 North Maple Street for grandfathered inactive activities of B, C, and X, WE 113 North Maple Street LLC owner, map 82, lot 4, I-1 zone.
Second?
Second.
Any conversation? Hearing none? Roll call, please.
Yep. Linda DeGray,
4.
Frank Alamo,
4.
Ken Helinski,
4.
Vidi Grillo,
4.
Joseph Muley,
4.
Terrence Lynch,
4.
and John Petronella is 4.
All right, well, you're all
7
set.
zip.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And you guys are great.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.
Yep, good night.
Okay.
You too.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? All right, thank you.
Sit down.
Thank you, Stephen. I wasn't kidding. Fast and
24th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, fire evacuation. In case of a fire, there's 2 ways to exit the chambers. To my left, go through the doors, take another left, go down the stairs and away from the building, or you can go out the back door. In either case, please walk a safe distance from the building. Roll call, please.
Yes, Terrence Lynch,
Present.
Linda DeGray,
Here.
John Petronella is here, Frank Alamo,
Here.
Joseph Muley,
Here.
Kenneth Helenski,
Here.
Vinnie Grillo,
Here.
Christian D'Antonio.
Here.
And Walter Crizel.
Here.
Okay, we don't have any attorney, oh, I'm sorry. I need a motion for the approval of the minutes for October 10th.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments, corrections? All in favor? All right.
Aye.
No town attorney report or zoning enforcement. And we don't need one.
I'd like to make a motion that we move item 16 right up behind public participation. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item 11.
And then we want to also move number 11
After.
right up behind that. If we could, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Anyone in the audience would like to speak in front of the commission, as long as there's nothing on the agenda? But I don't see anyone in the audience, so I am going to close public participation. And, John?
Yep. Yes, item 16, new business. SPR number 1942, 3 Weymouth Road, site plan modification to allow battery energy storage system. Enfield CTA LLC applicant, Enfield Club Properties LLC owner, map 17, lot 86, BG KSE SD OD zones.
Okay, I did invite these gentlemen to come and talk about this battery energy storage systems, because we don't know anything about these things, and I'm sure it's a new technology that's going to be coming in front of us with a lot of applications as they come. So they were gracious, so I said, give us a 5 to 10 minute spiel and tell us what you got.
Sure, good evening.
Thanks.
My name is, excuse me.
The red button.
Oh, it's on this. Well, on this is.
Okay, while he's doing that, name and address.
My name is Greg Carey. My address is 949 Washington Street in Holliston, Massachusetts.
Okay, and you, sir?
Gareth Wilson, project manager. Thank you. My name is Gareth Wilson, the project manager at BL Companies, 100 Constitution Plaza, Hartford.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Also with us via Zoom is Zach Poston. Zach is an associate of mine at RWE Clean Energy. Zach works in the Danbury office. And Jeremy Smith is our electrical engineer from Waldron Engineering. Also trying to get in, but I'm not sure he's had success, is David Rains. He's a director of fire safety for RWE.
Okay.
So we put together a short presentation. I'd like to walk you through it if I could.
Please.
RWE is a renewable energy company. We're one of the largest owner-operators of renewable energy assets in the United States. We have over 2,000 employees in the U.S. Our corporate headquarters is in Valhalla, New York, but as I mentioned, we also have a local office in Danbury. We're doing this battery storage project in conjunction with the Connecticut Green Bank. The Connecticut Green Bank has a energy storage solutions program where they're encouraging renewable energy developers to install battery units all over the state. The battery unit itself that we're proposing for the Health Tracks at the Health Tracks facility on Weymouth Road really has two main features about it. One is it will be connected to the building's electric meter. We call that behind the meter. So we're going to physically connect to the existing utility meter at the property, and it'll charge and dispatch energy to and from the grid. So the property owner also will have the option of utilizing the battery as backup storage in the event of a power outage. So in that respect, it's somewhat similar to a generator, emergency generator. The battery will provide stability to the grid, and it'll help meet peak demand periods. So you think of a heat wave in the summertime, when it's 90 degrees for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, there's a tremendous amount of load. Everyone comes in, turns on the air conditioner. And so when Eversource needs that extra energy, that extra power, they'll be able to draw it from this battery. The battery will be be monitored remotely on a 24/7 basis, and the equipment can be shut down at any time remotely. The town will be provided with, and especially the fire department and EMS will be provided with an emergency management and fire safety plan well before any equipment is installed at the property. The battery unit itself is a little less than 1 megawatt, about 3/4 of a megawatt, and it's about 5.5 feet wide by 29 feet long. So it's not a huge piece of equipment. It will be secured by a chain link fence that will be locked, obviously, and will have appropriate signage as required by the town, but the fire department and EMS. There are a couple of illustrations that we've shown. At this point, we're speccing a Tesla product, the Tesla Megapack. Obviously, the battery, it'll depend on supply chain issues, which we're all dealing with, and when the equipment can be delivered, how long it will take. But right now, the unit that we're speccing is made by Tesla. It's one of the best batteries you can buy on the market. We do have a plan that's shown on page 5 showing the location of the battery unit. I can ask Gareth to go into that a little bit more after we talk about fire safety. David Rains, were you able to join us? I don't think so. Jeremy, are you there?
I'm hoping he'll be on soon.
He'll be on soon.
Do you want me to go through it?
Yeah, Jeremy, if you don't mind, we're on page 6, dealing with fire safety. If you could give us an overview, please.
Excellent. Good evening. Jeremy Smith, Waldron Engineering, professional engineer, licensed state of Connecticut. Waldron is the electrical engineer and the Tesla partner on the project. This system is the advanced Tesla Megapack 2 XL that we're looking at today. It's NFPA 855 and designed to the most current revision of the International Fire Code. It's been tested to UL 9540 and UL 9540 alpha. At this point, I do want to discontinue presenting because my colleague David Rains is now here. David, I was just going through testing.
That's fine. You can continue and finish, Jeremy, and I'll pick up from there.
Excellent. Thank you. So the battery is containerized, designed, NEMA 3R rated for the outdoor installation in which we're looking to put it. All these have an active ventilation system called a sparker. They have layers of protection, but in the extremely unlikely event that a small amount of gas was created through thermal decomposition, that would be vented out and safely sparked at the sparker, hence its name. All these projects will come equipped with a Knox box. We're pleased to note that you are a Knox box community, and congratulations on being that. So you'll have a Knox box with all documentation, the safety manual that David and David's team will be preparing for you on this project. They'll be available to your first responders as they arrive on site. We will be providing, David and again, his team will be providing training for your local fire department specific to this particular site and to the Tesla Megapack 2 in general. And we will be developing a site-specific emergency response plan, emergency plan for you. And that would be that documentation that's contained on site. And David, do you want to take over?
All right, well, you did great, guy. I want to thank you guys for giving us a few minutes on this busy agenda. But what we really like, so my background is not only fire protection, but I've been in the fire service and I'm a fire chief, both here in Sherman, Connecticut and in Putnam County, New York, where I'm the chief of special operations. And I just want to let you guys know the technology we've chosen, I'm really comfortable with. As a first responder, I like the Tesla system. It has layers and layers of safety. I know we hear about lithium-ion battery incidents. This system is probably the most safe and stable system. Three reasons. The chemistry within these Tesla batteries, this generation, very stable, much higher ignition temperatures. If there was a potential failure, which is very, very rare, we haven't experienced any failures with the Teslas. As my colleagues explained, numerous levels of safety. It's got its own battery management system. So the battery management system looks at temperature, looks at charging, discharging, any anomalies, shuts itself down, notifies us, notifies Tesla, and we immediately respond and we can address it. The other part of my role is developing that site-specific emergency response plan. So I'll work with your fire marshal's office, I'll work with your fire chiefs. We'll talk about what the normal response is to an incident. We'll talk about what type of alarm system they want on this, and we'll develop that site-specific plan that will be signed off on by the fire department and RWE. So I know we'll be talking more in the future. I'll send along my contacts through Greg, and as questions develop, be more than happy to answer. Thank you.
So I'll turn the floor over to Gareth so he can show you the site plan where we're proposing to install the unit.
Thank you, Greg. Can I zoom in this? So if you're not too familiar with the site, I-91 is to the north, Route 5 is to the left of the page, and the private drive comes along here down onto Weymouth Road to the south off screen. So this area of grass to the rear of the parking lot, to the side of the building, is the location we have selected for the best battery unit. Originally, when we came to with the staff for pre-app, we were looking to put it somewhere in the front here, if you can see my cursor. At their suggestion, we moved to the rear, and that was actually wise advice. After we did our SUE survey, we found out that there's quite a lot of services come through this area already, so it just wasn't suitable on multiple accounts. If I just walk through the detail of it, it's engineering-wise relatively straightforward. It's 4 concrete pads surrounded by a gravel bed and 1 enclosure. Can I grab that so I could zoom slightly? That would just help, I think. There we go. Sorry, that's better there. So we have the existing electric coming along the front here. We're going to pick it up at this point here with the new pull box, bring it along to the switch gear, and and then we have an auxiliary rack to the side, and then the best battery unit, which you've seen the images of earlier, the 29 feet long, 5.5 feet deep unit. All these three are enclosed in a 7-foot high chain link fence. That's the 7-foot high is a requirement of the regulations for these. The reason we have so much space in the middle here is for forklift truck access to come in for any maintenance. So the batteries can be lifted out and put in the back of a truck, and then they're taking, actually I think, out of state for maintenance. So hence why we have that level of space there. We've planted screening along the front here, 13 arborvitaes along the front there at recommendation of the staff. We're keeping this fire access lane open during construction as well. And then if we move slightly towards the front of the building, the electric line basically follows the front. I'm struggling with this. Apologies. Whoa. It's not my own mic.
It's harder when
it's not my own. An engineer should figure it out, shouldn't it? So we're bringing an electrical line along the front bank of the building here to where the old transformer pad was, removing that transformer and putting a pull box in, and it connects again into the building. Again, fairly straightforward for that. If I just go to the next page. Grading wise, it is fairly flat in this area. We've managed to maintain that grade. Surface water flows from the right to the left, to the lowest point here. We're maintaining that. The concrete pads are raised 6 inches above the gravel itself. And then we're putting everything back as it was before. And then for the construction, if I can just jump to the sediment and erosion control, again, fairly standard stuff. We have our anti-track pads here at the entrance to the gravel drive. They're the prefabricated FOD system, plastic raised, almost like egg carton-like. We have silt fence surrounding the whole construction area, and then silt traps in the catch basins either side in the parking lot. One here. If I'm just going to click. Another here. Stockpile, concrete wash pit, fairly standard stuff. Construction is estimated, I think, between 9 and 12 weeks total. A lot of that's just for the electrical install and equipment arriving, setup, etc. But overall, it's 4 concrete pads, gravel surround, 1 enclosure, 7-foot high chain link fence and screened. Have you any questions I can help answer on that?
Any questions that you have? Ken?
Yeah, I do. Could you kind of walk through what the fire suppression sequence would be, assuming, something catches fire in the battery?
David, did you hear that question?
I didn't hear the beginning of the question. I heard the part about if the battery catches fire.
I'm looking for the sequence of what might occur. Say the battery catches fire, so what is the sequence of suppression measures that would go into place? I realize I've been reading that there is no known fire suppressant for the lithium-ion batteries, but that was an older article, so I'm not sure if that's still true. Okay, but what is the technique for putting out the fire if a fire should occur?
Okay, so great question. So you're correct. There's no effective agent on the market in the world that will stop the progression of a fire inside the module once the battery goes into thermal runaway. So we've designed the systems to prevent that. And in the event there is a catastrophic failure, the battery self-vents and we let it self-consume. It doesn't explode. It really melts down and we let it self-consume. And once the fire department's notified, we cool any adjacent boxes. In this case, there are no adjacent boxes. It's one battery unit. So we would let that self-consume and then turn it back over to Tesla to do the remediation. There is no agent. There is no sprinkler system. We don't put water on electrical enclosures. So I hope that helps a little bit. And I can certainly go into depth next time we speak.
Obviously, it's one of my concerns, and I'm sure it's one of the commission's concerns as well. But I did hear that one of the measures taken, or I did read that one of the measures taken is that you would wet the surrounding grassy area. Is that one of the possibilities as well?
That's correct. So we protect all adjacent exposures, any grass, any vehicles, any structures, anything else that might be involved. But we do let the battery self-consume. Again, in the 12 years I've been working with these batteries, we haven't had that situation occur. So I can't. I've witnessed quite a bit of failure. Test to fail, failure testing, and the Teslas will basically melt down. Again, it's not a big conflagration. Jeremy, I don't know if you want to add to this. I know you've witnessed some testing.
I have indeed, and that's the only time anyone's ever seen a Tesla Megapack 2 XL go into failure, is when we intentionally forced it to. There have been no incidents with this model. This is the safest model in the marketplace.
I read about some models of the Megapacks that did have issues back in 2021 and 2022.
Yes, there are two incidents with the Tesla Megapack 1, which is actually two models back. But just the two incidents, given the thousands of deployments and the tens of thousands of units, you're talking at just 2 units ever for Tesla Megapack 1, none for Tesla Megapack 2, and none for Tesla Megapack 2 XL.
Okay.
And what we've done, in the industry, so the Tesla specifically, the recipe of the actual batteries, we've added more iron and phosphate, less lithium and other flammable metals, which has increased that auto ignition temperature from temperatures that used to be like 3,000 degrees F to like 1,300 degrees. So it makes it very, very difficult once you've shut down the battery and put it in a static condition for the temperature to reach that ignition temperature and actually have a fire. And that's been the key to the success of this Tesla model.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Terrence.
Yeah, I just have one question. I'm looking at the layout here, and where you're putting these batteries is right opposite. There's a driveway there, and the next thing you see is the pool inside the building. What type of heat, if anything did happen, would the pool windows and the side of the building be exposed to?
What is the distance, do you know, from the battery to the building?
From this, it's over 40, 45 feet.
What, 30 feet maybe?
This is the battery itself is just over 40 feet from the building here.
Whatever, I've been there. I'm looking at the property.
Yeah, the testing and the heat fluxes recorded during the testing of a forced failure radiated out 8 feet from the face, but only a few feet from the sides and the back. Since the other gentleman brought up the incident in Australia, that unit was fully consumed. The unit to the right of it, which was only 6 inches away, was scored but still operable. 2 other units that were 9 3/4 inches away from the unit that was fully consumed were not damaged and were still operational.
And the National Fire Protection Association requires us to have a 10-foot setback. We go well beyond that. That's almost ×3 for most of our layouts. We won't put anything within 10 feet of the battery, even though National Fire Protection in 855 says we can do that. I think the layout here, Greg, is about 30 feet off the building. Yeah. So we're 4 times what the minimum code is.
So what you're telling me is that if the whole thing went awry, that there would be no heat that would hit the side of the building that would be an issue.
That's correct, sir.
That's correct.
Oh, sorry,
with these rated enclosure.
Frank?
Thank you. So you said there's no internal suppression systems. The first thing I wanted to ask was, how do you stop it from spreading from one to the other? So you said it self-consumes, so I imagine it has to burn itself out. So how long does that take? And why it's self-consuming, you said it automatically vents, or there's some venting system. So what's the toxicity of the product that's being vented through the venting system, and what could it do into the air? What kind of hazard or potential hazard? If the thing takes, I don't know, you're using the word self-consume. I think you're saying burning itself out. Just, I guess you stand back and watch it go until it stops sparking or burning. How long does that go on for, and what gets released during that process? And again, what stops it from spreading from one to another if there's no suppression? Thank you.
David, do you want me to take it, or do you want to?
Go ahead, Jeremy. I'll back you up based on what you
No
need.
problem. So thanks. That's an excellent question. So when we say self-consume, and again, by testing these, we were able to force several cells into a thermal runaway, and that spread to several other cells and consumed one module. So if you want to think of these like drawers, there are 9 racks and 3 modules or drawers per rack. So just the forcing one cell, saying, okay, this cell is bad, of the billions of cells that are out there, this one has a manufacturing defect that's discovered later. It goes into thermal runaway. We force that to happen. We're only able to burn out a few. So, how long does a Tesla Megapack 2 XL take to burn? It's never happened all the way through. So that's an interesting question. The Tesla Megapack 2 also is not. The Tesla Megapack 1, again, the Australian event was about 24 hours to self-consume that unit. And the one in California is still learning the firefighting techniques. They applied water to the unit, so it took much longer. Water tends to spread the reaction and short-circuit additional cells, which causes this to be a very long event, several days in length. That's why we strongly recommend against the application of water. Now I'll let David finish.
I would just say that the fire that we've seen in testing with the 2XLs is it's a melting fire. It's not. There is some smoke. It vents out the top. As a firefighter for the last 40 years, I can tell you that in honesty. And my job is not about selling these things. My job is to ensure that the first responders and the public are safe. So I can tell you that what's emitted from a battery storage unit fire of the Tesla and the recipe, the makeup, is far less hazardous than a vehicle fire or a structural fire. There's some hydrogen sulfide, there's some hydrogen, other constituents, but it's not a noxious plume of toxic gas.
Yeah, and I would point out that earlier this summer, we met with Laurie, the planning staff, department heads, the fire department was involved, and they asked many of the same questions that you're asking this evening, and I think we addressed all of their concerns.
Well, we haven't seen any comments from any of those.
This is an administrative approval, and they came.
Right, and you asked them to come. Yep, I remember you asking. So there's no toxic fumes that are put up into the atmosphere. So was there ever any metering done? I know you said you come from the fire service background.
Yeah.
So did you meter anything when that test went on? And then we have it at highways. We have to. We're very close to the interstate there too, as well. So I guess we need to know exactly what's gonna come out of that thing if it does go.
So I'd love to provide you guys with the plume analysis study that was done by third party, and some of the other Tesla information, which in all fairness you should have in front of you, which really explains this in detail. So I'd love that opportunity to get that out to your board and to take a look at that. I don't have it in front of me. I just came off a meeting here in Colorado, so I apologize. But I'm more than happy to get you that plume analysis and all the Tesla safety data that we provide to the public. to really take a look at this in detail.
David, we have provided a copy of the Megapack data sheet, which has the specifications and some of that information. It doesn't have obviously the plume analysis you're referring to, but there is specifications that are quite detailed that have been provided, which again.
Excellent.
So if I could still have the floor. So where's the administrative review process? So from like you, sir, I come from the fire service as well. So what I think is it's possible that we should go through a full application with this, seeing this is new to our community. I would like to be able to read and see the comments of our public safety personnel within our community, EMS, fire, police. I don't think this should continue, in my opinion, I don't think this should continue informally. I think it should be a formal hearing with comments and our staff opinions and our public safety experts. And you're still obviously working. I've been retired for 9 years, 8 years. I don't know anything about these things, and I know things can go bad, but I feel comfortable hearing from our local officials. That's just my opinion.
And we want you to be comfortable. And so, Greg, however the process needs to go, I'll support that, of course. So that's.
If you send me that information, I'll make sure Lori and the commission get that information.
First responders would already have to have this information and be comfortable enough to say, yes, we can handle this.
Right, we see nothing from them.
That would be outside of our purview, and this is.
Well, I'm talking about a full-blown application when we see a comment from the fire
Excuse me,
department.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Go ahead.
I can share my screen. This application went through review, like a normal site plan review. All comments have been approved. Did you say yeah? Okay. Well, for admins, you wouldn't get them.
Right, that's why I would like to see those.
You can go into the office and review those.
So if you want to go ahead and approve it tonight, go ahead.
Okay.
I've
can
put
you
my
see my
comments
screen?
on the record.
Go ahead.
So this is our review portal when we upload applications into the system.
We're not seeing your
All the
screen.
We
Oh,
can't
hang on.
see.
That's weird. This is I'm sharing. Hang on a second. Let me try again. Okay. Now can you see it?
Nope.
Oh my goodness gracious. Hold please. While I figure it out, I'm going to talk. All
Talk amongst yourselves.
All departments have finished their reviews, actually. I have the complete review from fire. Fire marshal was okay. I don't know why I can't get to share, but engineering had no comments. The fire marshal said, I will approve this revised site plan. Fire lane shall be maintained on the west side at all times. Collision protection may be required, but can be determined later. Review complete. Building department, they also completed their review. They said no concerns that should affect planning and zoning. Water pollution control, no comment, review completed. Police department said no comment, review completed. So the application is ready for your action. Thank you.
Sure.
So just to be clear, the fire department is okay with this and they've signed off on it.
Yes, and we've had multiple ARTs where the fire chief was involved.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Walter?
Can you
Yeah,
put
we-
the, oh, go ahead.
I just wanted you to understand that we did develop a site-specific emergency response plan with the fire department to ensure that they were completely, comfortable with managing this in the event of worst-case scenario.
I just don't see that in front of me. That's why I asked
I
the questions.
understand. I totally understand what your position is.
Walter?
Could you put the drawing back up? Jose, could you bring,
Just go back into, the little earth thingy to the left of that. There you go, left,
Left.
that one.
There you go.
Sorry. Can't see past the head.
all right, can you make it back to original size?
Yeah, hopefully.
All right. You see the on-ramp for 91? Now, what if some moron goes straight instead of turns left?
What happens if somebody drives into this thing?
That angle, they would have to obviously make their way through the enclosure, and at that angle hit the
Through the,
AUX.
you mean through the vegetation,
Through
you
the
mean?
vegetation, yeah, they would have to come all the way through.
Hit the trees, or
Hit,
go
hit
through?
the trees, hit the fence, hit the AUX.
Okay, and now the same scenario, if somebody's from the parking lot, instead of reversing out of a parking space, goes forward.
They would have to get through again, up the curb, down the slope, through the arborvitaes, the enclosure.
The fence.
The fence.
All right, so at least the batteries are on the backside, so they have to go through, they'd have to go through the enclosures
Try
first.
really
so.
hard to do that, yes.
Okay, just wanted to point it out. Thank you.
Anybody else? No. Go ahead, Joe.
So when this thing's active, it's charging and it's providing power back into the grid as well?
Correct.
So when if they lose power, this feeds their building, does it disconnect from the grid?
No, well, first of all, it has the option of providing emergency power to the building, but it does not disconnect from the grid.
So if there was an issue with a pole down or something, so those lines would be energized from this battery unit if there was an issue. Wouldn't that be kind of dangerous?
Jeremy, do you want to address that?
Yes, there'll be a pole-mounted switch. If the utility is offline in a disturbed state, that pole-mounted switch would disconnect the battery. So I think just to expound on what Greg was saying, that we're connected to the utility and providing power to the wider network, assisting with regional grid stability, frequency, but in the event of a casualty to the grid, where the grid's offline in a disturbed state, there is a switch that the utility can operate to shut us off. No problem.
Lori?
Yeah, I just pulled up the GIS topography, and should a car want to, or not want to, accidentally leave the on-ramp or the off-ramp, they would have to be going uphill and through ravines in order to get to that location. So, a good question. Yeah, and I think, from the parking lot, it's relatively flat, so that is what it is. But there is quite a few things in the way of a car smashing into it.
Anyone else? Okay. Any last comments?
No.
No?
Thank you for the
All right,
time.
well, thank
Appreciate
you.
the opportunity.
So, I appreciate you coming in and answering our questions. Like I said, it's a new technology to us, and it seems like all of the departments are okay with this. And, all right, thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
And this was a administrative approval, so on to the next item. And we have a guest. Don Poland is here to review the chapters 1 through 3 of our regulations. How are you tonight?
Good, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Just your name and that, because some people who are watching may not know who you are.
Right. For the record, Don Poland with Gilman York Property Advisors, and we are your consultants helping you rewrite the zoning regulations.
Okay.
So I believe you guys received a copy of chapters 1 through 3 last week. I'd like to provide you tonight with kind of an overview of what we've done, and then also we can engage in discussion around certain provisions if you have questions, concerns, so forth and so on. This goes back a long way.
Yes.
I think 2021. During that time, I was immersed in the regs and kind of knew them inside and out. And I've realized I'm trying to get back up to speed with them, which is always challenging. But at that time, the first cut through that I made is kind of a, let's see how things work out. And in that context, for example, in the interpretation section, the definitions, I would have gone through and typed every definition, every word that's defined into the find function within Word, and then see if it actually shows up in the regulations. And this is a common practice, and what you find is there's defined words that actually don't show up anywhere. So then that kind of calls into question, do we even need this definition? And so forth. So my point being is kind of started with this going through the regulations and trying to identify things that were either redundant, duplicate, didn't have a purpose, like an undefined, like a defined word that doesn't appear in the regs and so forth. The next cut through the regulations was then to start improving provisions and so forth. So here, if I just get my pages right, I believe it's page 9 on the document. It's Article 1, Introduction, and then Purpose and Authority. And going through and looking at your purpose and authority statement that existed within the regs, going through and looking at state statute and what is explained statutorily as purpose and authority, and then rewriting the section to ensure that you are in compliance with the state statute and how it addresses purpose and authority of zoning. So in that context, you will see an entirely new section there, which is Section 1, Article 1, Section 1.10, Purpose and Authority. And that's all showing up in red underlined text. So that is a completely new section that's been added, at least in the context of the text, the narrative in it, and was done to comply with statute. Then if you move on to Section 1.20, you can see it was originally, I believe, called interpretation. I added and applicability based on how it actually read. And then you will see a section in red that is new language to further clarify or more clearly state those things related to building on land conforming to the regulations and so forth.
Excuse me, Don, I just want to interrupt for a second. We've been having a hard time getting the right documents together. We've been updating the documents as staff on one document, and when we copied this, apparently those red sections did not come out.
They didn't. Okay.
They did not. So, and I was noticing a lot.
Do you have a spare copy of what you have by chance?
You could use mine.
I'd just like to see it.
Yeah.
Well, we've got the one that we got in June in the binder, and then we've got.
This should have been more updated than that.
This is where I was talking about, you push the little square, and it comes up.
So what they received didn't have the revision markings. They received this.
What I did is I downloaded the one from our shared document, and that's what came out.
Okay. Huh. Well, I can change how I explain this to better explain what's been done in looking at this.
Yeah.
And you kind of did it here on your page. I don't know if you did this just right now where you wrote red.
Yeah, I just wrote red.
So if you allow me to go back to page 9, then section 1.10, purpose and authority. In your copy, all that follows is now a new rewrite of your purpose and authority section. Essentially, I reviewed your purpose and authority. It was, if I recall, actually I can probably see in my document here, it was shorter, it was sparser, and it was outdated in the context of changes that have been made to 8-2. The statutory section for zoning and where it spells out purpose and authority. So therefore, I rewrote it put it in bullet form, which follows more with how it appears in statute. And therefore, that is a new section to this regs, or new in the context of the narrative in that entire section is newly written.
So it's more detailed at this point and more concise.
It is. It was, yeah, it was sparse in some ways. It didn't include everything that's included in statute. It was outdated in some ways in that the statutory language has been tweaked over time, so therefore it's an updated provision.
Just one question.
Sure.
Because that very first paragraph, these regulations are adopted by the town of Enfield, blah, blah, blah. And then the last sentence, these regulations are adopted to promote the following purpose of regulating the, and then you go on. In the original one, it was limit, and now it's promote. Is that the change that the 8-2 has made?
1 second.
Because, I just used all of these documents that I got
Understood.
and compared them all to what we have. So
Understood. I think it was a change in my language,
okay.
in
'cause
how I phrased it. I don't think
I
it was.
wasn't real thrilled with promote.
Okay.
That was just me, and I'm like, well, what about?
So,
Because then the first sentence is to promote height and number of stories, and I'm like, wait a minute, we
Let-
may not want to.
let me go back. Let me go back and check that.
Okay.
Actually, when you said it that way now, that is sounding statutory to me.
All right, no,
The
just-
idea of promoting certain things, but I can
Okay.
double check that.
Just, that would be great. All right,
Linda, just so, but now it says regulate. Right?
what do you, no. This sentence says, these regulations are adopted to promote the following
Purpose.
purpose of regulating, and
regulating
then there's
the-
this list
right,
of things.
right.
And in our current
Mm-hmm.
regulations, instead of promote, it says limit.
Okay.
And that's the question, is this a statutory thing, or is it just
Right.
done?
I was just checking to make sure what I have electronically is the same what I have in front of me.
Yeah, all right. Okay, nope, that was my question.
Okay. For example, I'll just give you a quick example. If I go back to your original language, like it says, purpose of, oh, you did have promoting in previously, and a portion of it may not have been in the same place.
Right.
But promoting the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. For example, morals has been stricken from statute as, an arbitrary, subjective thing and so forth. So that's what I mean in the context of it's been updated to reflect the language, and I'll see if promote or limit makes sense there. So,
All right, no, I'm just curious.
no, please, and anything. It helps
I'm
me
just
a lot.
curious.
And often my focus may be from one way. It's the challenge of not knowing your regs inside and out. You guys, at least I know you, Chair, with your longevity on the committee, know your regs, and your staff know them better than I ever will. So I'm in this constant state of asking questions. And in the marked up version, I have comments in the margins where I'm posing questions back to kind of staff saying, what about this? What about that? So then, if you look at the next section, section 1.20, interpretation and applicability. And applicability was added here, and it was based on how some of the wording applied here. After the first paragraph, you then have buildings and land shall conform to the following, and then presented in bullets, and then followed by a short paragraph. That language at the bottom there with the bullets is newly added language to further fill out this section. So that was the second area of redness that I mentioned that you guys aren't seeing in red. In section 1.30, the zone districts, this is kind of in a hold pattern right now. because A, we know there's some stuff listed here that doesn't apply anymore, and B, we don't know exactly what the outcome is going to be with specific zoning sections. So this is one of those areas we just don't really touch at this time, and we will come back to this table later on when we're ready for a final draft and make sure it actually matches with the regulations. Oh, there's also some miswording of districts. The way they're worded here versus the way they're worded in their sections don't jive. So all that will get cleaned up in time. Oh, which leads me to the point that I should have made first, is this is a draft before you. This is not the final and end all. The first cut through of regulations is so messy. And basically what we want to do is show you that mess, give you the opportunity to go, I don't like this, or why this, and then get us to a clean draft where we can then really start working on the nuances, and it's easier to track and pay attention to what's changed. So I wish I had a better process here, but it just is what it is. Whenever you see highlights in yellow, they're just me kind of making notations to myself. So you'll see on page 11, Article 12.10. Almost any time I run across a reference to another section in the regulations, I just highlight it. And that is because at the very end of this, numbering in sections are going to change. So I'm going to have to go back with the original document on another screen and figure out what all those references are. Did they stay the same, or did they change, and do they have to be updated? So those are just kind of place markers for me so that I don't forget to do that in the end. Moving along to then page. The other thing, I'm just going to apologize. If you see me doing this and squinting, I recently had eye surgery. And while my distance vision has been corrected greatly, I don't have prescriptions yet for my near. So I'm existing in this world of like nearsightedness isn't working well. So just bear with me if I look a bit funny. So then on page 12, section 1.50, general provisions, that whole section that follows it is new language to clarify these things. Zoning is prohibitive by nature. That is, that which is not expressly permitted is automatically prohibited. So we want to make sure that the regs state that up front to make it very clear. If something's not expressly permitted, then it is prohibited. And that then plays into other things, like when we get to the definitions, you guys define a junkyard, but your regs also outright prohibit a junkyard. They're not allowed. So then it calls into question, well, if it's prohibitive, if it's not allowed, why even bother defining it? It just doesn't exist in that section. So this is to make that clear. If it's not permitted, it's prohibited. Also, the idea that minimum standards, how they are to be interpreted as minimum requirements and so forth, and multiple standards that in the case, and we know there are, and we're going to try and correct them, that there be found to be conflicting requirements, the most restrictive provisions shall apply. And that's kind of a safety mechanism for you guys, that someone doesn't say, well, this section says this, that section says that, and we think it's this. You go with what is the most restrictive. If you then have an issue with that, if you want to address it, you can always amend the regulations and make that change. We will attempt to eliminate all and any of those conflicts, and we've already started doing some of that. So then the next section now, Article 2.
Question?
Oh,
Don.
Yes.
Under B, so I'm looking at your little electronic thing here.
Yep.
So I pushed one of your suggestions on 9/17, gives the date and time. You have a note in there. Are the BI-HBG H different than BL and BG? If so, should they be added? Can they be added?
Yep.
No, so we're not seeing any of that stuff. Nobody else is seeing it unless they're looking at that.
Right.
You're asking us a question, but how are you going to get the answer if nobody sees that question?
Understood. That's a challenge. So that's why
I see it because I'm looking at it electronically. And I
Understood.
think that's very helpful the way this format. I've never seen it before.
Right.
It's pretty cool, actually.
So my feeling is right now, due to that limitation, and what I'm going to do, Lori, is I'm going to PDF with all this in it. So then we will send that on to them and they will see all of that. They can do what you're doing and go in electronically also.
But this is like your suggestion.
Understood. In some of those comments, it may be a suggestion. It may be a comment back to you guys. It may also be, in my mind, a comment of something I need to discuss with staff.
Right.
So I don't necessarily want you to get hung up on every single word, every single comment, but yes, they're meaningful. I put them there for a reason. So in this context, though, right now, I'd say since we do have this limitation of how you're viewing it, let me go through and run through the highlights with you tonight. And we can come back as we establish the work sessions after this. We can come back at the first work session and go through those actual comments, making sure that you have them in front of you.
This one's a rather important one. You have a question mark to us.
Right. Understood. And we'll get to that.
Okay, thank you.
So, interpretation section, which is now in your copy, page 13. Section 2.0, you guys had some various provisions that kind of did some of this, but didn't quite do some of this. This language is pretty standard. It appears in many zoning regulations around the state. Somewhere along the line in my career over 20 years ago, I lifted it from someplace and have continually reused it. And I've seen it in many other places where it hasn't even been me. I know Len Chalder uses it also and so forth. But this is a way to really provide big picture context to how we actually interpret things. Things like shall is mandatory, may is permissive. That whether we say zone, zoning district, or district, we are speaking of the same thing. So it provides this big picture context to interpretation. Not just the specific defined terms. And I think this is a very useful provision to have within the regulations to guide yourself as the commission, to guide staff, but also to guide applicants and to guide the public and how they should be reading these regulations. Is that outside? Okay.
With my copy, are you seeing the final edit? Because you're not seeing the strike through, correct?
Right.
For interpretation?
So for
You're seeing the final words, right?
Yes.
Okay.
For your copy.
Those final wording that you're seeing, it's just that it hadn't been highlighted.
Right.
With the edits.
Right. So they're not seeing the highlighting, and they're not seeing all the marginal documentation of what's been deleted, what's been formatted, and they're not seeing, as Frank said, the comments that I've put.
Ones that we got in June has a lot of the strike-throughs and
Yep.
comments in that.
Yep.
so.
The only thing is since June, I've gone through and done a bunch more.
Okay.
So I will make sure we get you the messy copy into your hands. I'll have that off to Lori in the
And it's even
morning.
more messier than what I already got?
Sorry.
Unless there's changes, I think we need to make more.
Understood. And like I said, just the first cut through is just always an absolute mess. And then section 2.20, interpretation of other terms. This is an incorporation of A, some language you had, B, some additional comments that were received in staff reviews as to what needs to be contained here. So essentially, this is language I've used many times, and we basically say that if there's a question about the definition of something that does not appear in your definitions and your regulations, then the first place to look for an alternative definition is within your subdivision regulations. The next place to look is the state building code. The next place to look is the general statutes. Do they define it? And if you make it all the way through those without finding a definition, then there is what's called the Planner's Dictionary. And then the last option is then going to a comprehensive general dictionary like Webster's. Because at the end of the day, we're more interested in a kind of statutory, regulatory kind of definition. So we would hope to find such a definition elsewhere before we go to a dictionary. But this sets up for if any word ever comes into question that is not outright defined, then you have a way of determining what the definition of that will be. Rare instances have I actually seen that occur, the need to go there, but it does occur.
We have used the Planner's Dictionary before.
You what?
We have used the Planner's Dictionary before.
Yeah, I like the Planner's Dictionary. I updated based on staff comments that I had received. I tweaked and updated some definitions and added some definitions based on comments using the Planner's Dictionary. My challenge with the Planner's Dictionary is, though, it provides multiple definitions. So then it's like, if you're in a dispute over how do we define this, you then end up in a even crazier place.
Agreed.
So then in the definitions section, this is going to be more difficult without you guys seeing all the comments and so forth. But essentially, as I said, my first process was going through and searching for every single definition to see if they appeared in the regulations. And I identified probably between a half dozen and a dozen that you have definitions for, but they don't appear anywhere. I think in most cases, and I'll hash that out with staff, in most cases, those definitions probably either A, go away because they're just not defining anything that's useful, or B, the fact is you guys are using a similar but different terminology. And then it calls into question, do we define that similar terminology or do we change the existing terminology in the regs to match the definition that already exists? But either way, each of those will have to be addressed.
There is a couple of places that I noticed that, for an example, daycare, home, family, and then we have family daycare. I mean, it just seems like they're the exact same thing, but just because they reverse the words,
Yep.
they're there. So.
Yep. And we'll identify those and go through those. And some of those then, especially in the daycare realm, can tie back to statute. That statute differentiates between, refresh my memory, family daycare and
Facility.
And yeah, so.
And I did have one question.
Sure.
because- And I don't know if anybody else here might have heard or understand. Would abandonment be needed in these definitions? I mean, it is in our regulations, but it's not defined under.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Because that's a big issue now that we've learned that just because you stopped using it, unless somebody
Right.
says they abandon it, you
Nope.
can go back and use it again. So I'm just
Nope, I appreciate that.
about that.
No, those are great. And see, that's stuff you would know better than I will ever know. So if there are things like that, if you feel like, oh, there's a word that we've dealt with lately that's not defined, then yes, make the suggestion.
Because it's becoming a bigger issue,
Yep.
especially where there's non-conforming use,
Yep.
and we've had a big case about that, so.
Yep.
A big to-do, so,
Definitely.
all right, thank you.
Now, I think if I recall, and we'll get there, your non-conforming regs have a section on abandonment specifically.
Yeah.
So then that's kind of the starting place to then how do we define abandonment, more specifically.
And I will say that's definitely a section that we have to reword and to meet current statute.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it doesn't meet it currently.
Yeah,
The way
because
it's
the
written
last,
as it is.
the law people, the land use law thing that I went to
The
all day.
Public Act?
Whatever, that
yeah,
thing, I
yeah,
can never
okay.
remember.
The education.
sessions.
That,
The
yeah, and there
educational
was a big
sessions.
section
Go,
on it.
Linda.
Hey, I'm a nerd. What can I say? But there was a big section on it and a whole hour of these attorneys talking about abandonment.
Right.
So it is a big deal.
Right, it is, definitely.
I like her idea of adding a definition to that.
Yep. And I already made a note, so we will get to work on that. For example, so then sometimes I deleted stuff, and you're not going to really notice that well because of you're not seeing everything that I did right now. But you're showing a number 9, and there's nothing next to it on page 14. And that actually was a definition for amusement machines. And that probably made a lot of sense back in 1975. Probably isn't that applicable today. And therefore, it's one of those areas where I think you can just be done with that definition. Right.
For this.
Early in my career, me and another planner had written an article for the Planners magazine about playing off of David Letterman's top 10 lists of the top 10 reasons why your zoning regs may need updating. And it was things like you still have provisions for bomb shelters as accessory structures and so forth and so on. And I think the amusement machines fall into that now today. So,
There was one more thing.
yep.
I know, I'm a pain in the butt.
No.
But it says, we had in our regs under 3, definitions 3, the zoning board of appeals shall have no authority to vary this
Yep.
provision. I checked with the ZBA, and apparently they want that there. So I don't know if
Yep.
it's something that we should have,
So-
or if it's,
So this is the whole thing, and I deleted those provisions where I felt they needed to be deleted, and this is what it is. There's express authority to you as a commission through your regulations to prohibit a ZBA from varying use. That you can say uses cannot be varied, or that specific uses can't be varied. You actually don't have the authority to prohibit them from varying what I would call bulk, area, and dimensional requirements.
okay.
So where those provisions existed and referenced dimensional requirements, your statement's kind of meaningless.
Okay,
So,
because this was a prior chairman
yep.
of the ZBA, and he was very adamant. Yes, we don't want to be able to do that. We want you in that.
I mean, and that's where at the end of the day, I know it's easier said than done coming out of my mouth. That's where the ZBA has to make a decision. Do we not want to vary this? And if so, then, say no. And you just need 2 votes to say no.
No,
So
they were just trying to make us the bad guys.
Yep.
Correct. Okay. I just need to be clear on that.
Yep.
Thanks.
And that's part of the overall goal here, is to essentially clean things up and make your regs more kind of compliant, more streamlined, so forth and so on. I do have highlighting, which you should see on page 14, related to bed and breakfast. This is just one of those places where it's kind of a pet peeve for me. In the context of, I like the idea of bed and breakfast. Most people do. Most commissions like bed and breakfast. This is a policy matter. Because they're allowed in most regulations. But in most regulations, there's a provision very similar to yours, that it can only be 5 bedrooms. This is the math. Let's say $200 a night at 365 nights a year times 5. That would be 365,000. But the average occupancy of a bed and breakfast nationally is 40%. That's $146,000. Can you see very quickly, can someone really make a living when you take all the costs into running that? Can they really make a living and operate that business? So this is one of those places where I'm just going to push on you guys a little bit and say, would you ever consider increasing that number? And it doesn't have to be a huge increase. Are you willing to go to 6? Are you willing to go to 7? A slight increase could make it more viable. You don't have to make up your mind right now, but that's an area where I just think I want to add my experience, what I've encountered, what I've dealt with, and just kind of say to you, are you willing to consider something else there? You are also totally free to just say, no, Don, we're not interested, and so forth. So I'm going to put that out there for now. We're not going to hash it out. We can talk about it again in a work session, but just give you something to think about.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Just one quick question with that. You're saying, okay, do we want to increase that? And that's fine. But how do you want to increase that? Are we saying if we want to increase it, are we going to allow them to build on an addition? What are we going to allow with that?
Right.
Because most of the bed and breakfasts that you see are old houses that have had all these rooms for years, and somebody's just trying to make some money with them.
Yep.
Now, if you say, should it be more? So if I have an old house with 5 bedrooms, and I want to use it, can I add on 2 bedrooms? And how do you stop that, and what kind of language do you want to use?
Well, once again, I think you end up in the same place where you would be with any commercial business or even any residential business. You know, can they comply with the other existing regulations to actually do an addition? Okay. Do they have additional space interior-wise that just, has been used as common area because they couldn't use it as an additional boarding room?
I was just trying to get your mindset as to where you were going with that.
Yep. So, and then my other question, Lori, and this is just me drawing a blank in the moment. Do you guys have a specific provision on bed and breakfast elsewhere in the regulations? I can't remember now. I do not. You do not. I know you did a very good reg in East Windsor? No. Oh, I'm thinking of the accessory dwelling unit. Sorry. That's the other thing is we could think about adding a specific provision related to bed and breakfast. A lot of communities have that. That would, further cover it beyond just changing the number. So that's something to consider.
I'd say I just trying to figure out where you were coming from.
Understood. Thanks.
Excuse me.
Yep.
So I just had Georgie do a PDF. She sent it to me. I've just sent it to you. So in about 2 minutes, if you want to look at this on your iPads, then you could see all the red marks and stuff. So
cool.
It'll take it. It's going to check for safety first. So, but I just received it. I just sent it to you all. So make sure your iPads are on and look in your emails, please.
Oh, we have to look at the email? Does it just pop up for us automatic? Very good. Oh, stop it. All of you stop it. I did it on the button.
So on the, if I go to your definition of cellar, I've added the word basement with it. So the word basement appears in your regulations, but it's not defined. So then it kind of creates the question, do we want to change this definition from cellar to basement?
This doesn't have it doesn't have the edits.
It didn't hold the edits?
No. Never mind.
I'm looking at it now, sir.
It didn't hold the edits. I don't know why it's not doing that.
That's weird. Let me try and,
It might be because the file is just really big.
Yeah, but it looks like a normal document. So we will get you either a link or the actual document in a PDF that you could look at, and we will talk more in detail with this, but we could get through some other things tonight.
Yeah, I mean, is the issue that just that when exporting from Word, it doesn't save the comments? Can you send us the Word document?
It's, I don't.
We're not using Word. It's an
Yeah, we're not
online Google Doc.
Online shared document.
Yeah, it only
let me see something. I just tried this myself. Yeah, I'll get you a document tomorrow.
Yep.
I can do it. It's the Google Doc that's causing the issue.
Yeah.
But I can do it. So
Okay.
I'll get you a
All
document.
right. Sorry for the yet another interruption. We're trying to help.
Maybe.
Technology is a blessing and a curse. So cellar and basement is another one of those good, interesting areas where you use basement in the regulations, but it's not defined. So then do we incorporate it into the cellar, or is basement something different than a cellar, and does it deserve its own definition?
I did look it up, and they are two different things.
Are they? Okay.
They are, and I think here in New England, we use, some people say in my basement, and some people say in the cellar, and we just use it as an interchange word.
Right.
As opposed to the two separate things.
Okay.
So
All right.
I'm just guessing, but they are two different things.
Okay. And
Sorry about that. We're actually working on modifying that section of our regulations because it's very hard to understand, and it talks about basements and,
okay.
All
right.
So
it's good to know. What's the next one? Co-location, which is a definition you have specific to antennas, and that makes perfect sense. Cellular antennas and so forth, wireless communications. But actually the phrase co-locations only appears in your definitions. It doesn't appear in your regulations related to that. Community center is another one of those. It does not appear in your regulations. Oh, it only appears in one place as a permitted, it's in your use tables as a permitted use, but it's not used anywhere else, so.
That's because we were going to have a community center right behind us, and then it got changed into apartments. So, so it never really got
Materialized.
materialized. I mean, it would be nice to have a community center for the town.
Right. Then, and once again, then that's maybe we leave it in the use table, we leave the definition of it, and it's a way of you kind of conveying a message with your zoning regulations that you would like a community center in your town, and you're providing the opportunity for it. So. Community residents. I know we talked about this a little bit, Lori, today, and I'd forgotten in that moment. You guys have a definition further up. Your adult and child daycare facilities actually does a whole bunch of things. A facility providing non-medical care for elderly and mentally and physically impaired and children under 18 and so forth and so on. Oh, and then it cites to the statutory stuff on children daycare. And then you have the definition on community residences, and with the statutory language of mentally retarded persons, not a politically correct phrase anymore.
I was gonna ask, is there some way that change?
Yeah.
Just that words right.
Right.
That's why
Right.
it's highlighted.
Well, actually,
Understood, but
the correct term is intellectual, wait a minute, I got
Intellectually
it.
challenged.
No,
Mentally retarded.
it is
Right.
intellectual
right.
or developmentally disabled or physically
Right.
impaired.
So this is the whole challenge.
Much nicer.
This is the challenge that we end up being confronted with. That definition is citing to a very specific section of statute that oversees those facilities, right?
Yep.
And its title is still to this day mentally retarded persons. So then I 100% agree. We need the modern definition. And maybe that's what we do. Maybe that's the definition that we use, and then we just cite numerically section XYZ of Connecticut general statutes without saying it, and then when the person lands there, they get the offensive language and not in your regs. So, agreed, absolutely. So we will clean that up, and sorry, I was just writing a note on the proper phraseology that you had looked up.
Yeah, well, only because in fair rent, we had to get that corrected.
Right.
So.
Yep. Okay. Excellent.
That's why I knew that one.
Coverage, for example, just another one of those areas. You say coverage, and then the definition, the language that follows, I believe, unless I modified that, yeah, is specific to buildings and so forth. So I put in brackets there, coverage building. Are we talking specifically about building coverage, or are we talking about total coverage on a lot that would include impervious surfaces? And I don't think, and you can correct me, Lori, I don't think I found a differentiation elsewhere in the regulations.
I don't believe there is, but we really should, because we do look at both structural coverage and impervious coverage. So building coverage versus impervious.
Right.
Where the building coverage would be included in the impervious.
Right. Okay. Then let me make a note there. You guys do have a definition somewhere for like surface impervious, but then it doesn't show up anywhere in the regs. Also, don't feel bad about your regs as we hack them apart. You are no different than any other community. The fact is, you know, it's what happens with regs. We add stuff and add stuff. We rarely delete stuff, and they grow into monsters over time. And language that was appropriate 60 years ago still appears in the regulations today, and so forth and so on. So I don't want you to feel like I'm beating up on your regs or taking it personally. This is just what it is. And
No, we're bringing it up to date, up to modern times and terminologies.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that at all.
developable land, developable acres appears in your regulations, but developable land does not.
think it's the wind.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
wind.
Wow. Lori, if I was correct, you and staff are working on the agricultural things like farm definitions and so forth.
Yeah, we're going to be, yep.
So I've just been kind of highlighting them and noting them. Your
Add
flood,
an update on that if you want.
an update to provide verbally now or an update to send me text?
Just a quick verbal update. The Conservation Commission has actually been actively working on some farm-friendly regs. So they have our recent findings of the agricultural regs just spread out. So that's been actively worked on by them.
Excellent. Thank you. Your definition of floodplain references the 500-year flood, not the 100-year, and the 500-year is not regulatory.
That is correct. And you never know, the 100-year flood might be the 500-year flood next year.
Pretty
so,
soon.
Based on climate change.
Does that need to be changed?
I believe it should.
Okay. I literally, my head spun around and I double checked and I've just never seen a 500-year floodplain reference.
We're
So
just being progressive.
It's almost correct.
You were anticipating intense storms. Another provision in floor area gross usable. You have a last sentence on that definition that says cafeterias may be deemed as gross usable floor area at the discretion of the commission. And this is another one of those with kind of arcade machines and so forth.
Yeah.
Is I'm not sure you need this provision anymore. The age of the corporate cafeteria is kind of in the past. I think your facilities that had corporate cafeterias are no longer occupied.
They are closed
Right.
and vacant.
Right. So this is just one of those areas where I just, as I'm reading through, I'm like, you know what? We could lose, 12 words or a sentence, from the regulations just in trimming. So,
Because I got a question.
of course, that's fine.
Well, how would this apply to like the schools? Because they have cafeterias. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yep. Understood. That did cross my mind.
We use the cafeterias as other things where they fold up the tables and use them as dance halls and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I think this is really referring more to residential units. I mean, they talk about the dwelling unit exclusive of garages, breezeways, unheated porches. So it's very specific to dwelling units.
Where are you?
On floor area finished.
No,
Number 47?
I'm in floor area gross usable.
Gross usable.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
As applied to non-resident.
I interpreted this as being commercial.
Yep, that
Maybe
one
I'm
is.
wrong.
Yeah.
That thought did cross my mind. But it was things like common lobbies and stuff. I don't know if we use that terminology in schools or whatever. But then the other question is, cafeterias may not be deemed as gross usable floor area, discretion of the commission. Why is it being treated different than anything else in that sense? Why is it different than a lobby? Why is it different than elevators and hallways?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
That feels to me like either Mass Mutual or Phoenix or Lego at some point came and asked you for something related to floor area and the thing, and you guys made it something that you could have discretion on. That's kind of what it says to me. So
before my time. I don't
right,
know.
right.
Okay. All right. No, I was just.
And that's the issue. It's before your time and all of our time.
All our time.
Back in the day. Terrence, you were here. Why did we put that there?
I was here a long time ago, but I don't remember that. That was years ago that I was here.
No,
Oh, the thing is if we don't see or can foresee a use for it, then we probably don't need it.
Right, right. And if something arises, then you always have the ability to amend the regulations to address. Surprisingly, this was probably one of the most shocking to me. Garden Supply Center does not appear anywhere else in your regulations. So.
I'm going to say,
I think.
back in the day, we did have a garden supply center right across the street. And it was, yes,
Across the street from here?
yeah, right over here.
Okay.
So Thompsonville Garden Supply
Hawthorne,
Center.
Hawthorne's was as well.
No, yeah, in Hawthorne's. So and now I'm just, and what brought to mind was like Garden Dream now is a garden supply center.
But why do we
Depot
need to
is.
define it?
I don't know. I'm just saying.
I mean, it's like,
I
okay,
would've-
so a home improvement center, we don't
No, I'm
define that.
just thinking that's why it's here.
Yeah.
is Because of that.
We got Tarno
We
over
had
there
some,
too.
right, so,
Home Depot has a whole section.
yeah,
Yeah.
all right.
Costco
So
has.
in some ways, and from my perspective, it's retail, you know, so we don't need the specific definition.
The only thing I could think of is maybe there was an issue with a farm having this on their facility, and that may have been added through that.
Right.
But that's a farm use.
Right. And once again, it doesn't appear anywhere else in the regs, so it's not like they create a provision for it. So you guys have a definition for home professional office, which I like. I'm a strong fan of, especially in this day
Question.
and age. Sure.
So if you back up to 53 under building height,
Yep.
Rick puts a comment in there on the 26th of September saying,
Yep.
structures such as decks are not considered building under the building definition. But it's there in that paragraph. I don't understand what he's adding. This is Rick Rochelle adding.
Right. It was building height is the definition?
Yeah, it's
Let me go back.
tagged on the 55. I'm not sure. I know talking about the roof and where you measure, but he's saying structures such as decks. Decks is not considered a building under the building definition. I don't get it.
I'm trying to find.
Know what he's trying to.
He's looking at his.
Number 54.
Number
He's
50.
Looking at the comment.
Yeah,
50.
it looks like it
53,
popped up
I'm
on.
sorry, 53.
On 53. I'm just trying to see how that fits there.
Well, even on the document, 53 height building, is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, if you push the little yellow tab, Rick
Yeah.
adds in there about decks. I just wanted, because we talked about decks in depth a couple of weeks ago, and it's not considered, he's saying decks is not considered a building under the building definition. Decks. I don't know. I don't know why it's there under building height.
Well, we'll figure that out.
Right,
You know,
so they're
a de-
building
a
height. Yeah, it
deck-
doesn't.
A
Right.
deck is not necessarily part
But it-
of a building.
But it's in height.
I get that. Maybe he put it in the wrong place.
That's why I was just asking. I don't know if Don knew what that.
I'll go back and check.
Yeah, we'll
I'm
check
actually
that.
not showing that comment.
I'm not showing it either.
in mine.
Yeah, I have it here.
Under 53, if you tap the little yellow box.
Yeah, no, I'm just not having anything there to tap. I
Yeah,
have
I
some
don't have
above, I
anything there
have some
either.
below, but I do have. I'll have to go back to the original document and look, because I know Rick made a lot of the comments
He did.
about height provisions throughout. So
But it's hard to plug everything in, I guess I'm saying.
Yeah.
Maybe he just added it to the wrong
I
section.
think
and then
that's one of the
deleted it.
versions that's missing edits. It's an older version.
Was sent to
This is
us.
the one on the
It's the last thing. This is the
shared
latest
site.
and greatest that I got.
so we'll look into it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me just put a highlight.
And you add something about child daycare in the same.
No, I lost. Where was I?
It was on
No.
1753 is where I stopped you. I had you go back.
Yeah, home professional office was where I was. And I was saying, I like having home professional offices. All in all, I like the way you define them. It was the last sentence, though, struck me kind of odd.
A doctor or a dentist shall not include any biological or medical testing laboratories except as an accessory use in connection with his or her practice.
Yep. Now, I get the not wanting the biological and testing, but what actually jumped out at me in making that statement, you're implying that doctors' offices and dentists' offices are allowed as a home professional office.
We have several.
Do you?
Yes.
So it's a residence?
Yes.
And it's an office?
Yes.
Okay. Just so you know, I grew up going, my pediatrician was in a house just like that in Wethersfield. But with those being, this is what struck me out, with those being allowed in residential zones, at the end of the day, a doctor's office and a dentist's office is a pretty intensive use, in the sense that the constant turnover through appointments. So that just kind of struck me as odd. If you have it, if you're fine with it, if it's never been an issue, then I'm perfectly fine.
I don't know how many more we have. There
Right.
used to be quite a few when I was growing up.
Right.
And
Okay.
then also, where it says, which are not allowed in home professions is group dancing. We did approve a house that had built a room to have ballroom dancing and teaches it there. And
Okay.
then during COVID, we started to allow beauty shops, barber shops, massage, and
Okay.
manicures during COVID to be
Right.
done in a person's home.
Right.
So, I mean,
But those were getting state permits too. They had to get
Right.
licenses.
right, but we approved that.
Okay.
And how can you say, oh, well, you can't get one anymore, but we're gonna let,
No, all the power to you. No, I think all that's great. For me, it was one of those cautionary moments. But if you guys have these things, if they've been all right, then absolutely. I actually applaud you for it. So,
we do allow them.
Okay.
And they do have to, undergo all of the, health
state licensing and then the health district and.
Yeah.
Sure.
There's special use.
Yeah, there's special
Is it-
use, but
Okay. Top of the next page.
Don, impervious surface coverage, number 59.
Yeah.
So you may want to put a note to link that with number 34 you were talking about.
Yeah, and that's actually the one that I was making reference to. So you guys have this phrase, impervious surface, but it does not show up anywhere else in the regulations. It only shows up here. So it feels like at some time in the regs, you guys were trying to do a building coverage and an impervious coverage, or at least considering impervious surfaces, but it never got, the parts of it were never connected. So I think that impervious surface goes away, and it's an impervious coverage definition that appears up with the other building coverage definition. And then we add an impervious coverage provision to the bulk and area requirements. And that actually completes the loop and it works. So, yes, Walter.
So I see you added a number 57, and it wasn't in the original? Housing for the elderly?
but we also have elderly housing, so.
Oh, is that what it?
Yeah, we have elderly housing and housing for the elderly.
Right.
We,
Oh, so
we
that's-
definitely need to look at all of those
No,
housing
that's where the
definitions and
numbers-
figure out which ones really need to
Number
be in
switch
there.
from the original is.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so maybe it was just redefined from, I didn't look back to see.
Yeah, there's an elderly housing definition too. Actually, I mean, you just brought my attention to that one, so.
We still have 40, yeah, we still have 40 here too, so maybe it's a duplicate then. I don't know.
Let me highlight that. The phrase elderly housing, I don't believe appears in the regs. It's that other phrase that appears. So I'll take a look at that.
Yeah,
So
elderly housing is number 40, and then housing elderly is 57.
right. All right. I'll get a look at those.
Maybe 162 years old and 165 years old.
Oh, so that I actually, in my notes, I have a long
62 and
narrative
65. Huh?
No.
on that. So I have a narrative in my comment notes on the side on that. And a lesser known thing related to fair housing. Under federal fair housing, an age-restricted development of 55 and over can legally have 20% of its units not restricted to 55 and over. 62 and over under fair housing can then be 100% 62 and over. And now I'm confusing myself. Do you guys use 55 or 62? And then the question is, are you comfortable with that in the context of your age restricted?
We have,
Didn't we use 62 on the Felician Sisters?
we have
Yeah,
a
it's-
55-plus community.
Mhm.
Yep.
And then we have the 62 plus. And I do remember seeing something. Hold on.
On the Felicians, we use 62 years old.
It was, no, it had to do with in here.
So we have assisted living facilities.
Senior
is
residential
62.
development. You have
Is it 55?
Senior residential development,
Okay.
and which is an age-restricted residential development for single-family
55.
detached would be the 55.
Okay.
One's 55.
But it doesn't say an age on the senior residential. So I think that was, or, wait, Planned Senior Life Community.
Another one.
And it doesn't, hey, we got
Well,
them.
we got them all covered. We don't discriminate. We don't age discriminate here.
Was specifically for the Lego site, if you recall.
Because
That was a new regulation
Yeah.
that we adopted for the,
Right, but it doesn't have an age on it. It just says.
I think because it was a range. It
Right.
was a lifestyle, so it was a life community, so you might go in there as a elderly apartment, and then you might need
Yes, so-
assisted
yeah,
living.
'cause the America
It was a stepped
Place, yeah,
program.
it was a step program.
Don, were you just quoting like state or federal ordinances now? The language you have to use? We just adopt that?
Federal fair housing differentiates between the two. That a 55 and over community can only restrict, under federal fair housing, only 80% of the units can be restricted for 55 and over.
We have to comply to that, don't we?
Yeah,
So
because it's federal.
We just adopt that language?
You can. And then.
And we don't get sued.
And then 62 and over can be 100% 62 and over. My point was, I thought I saw both numbers, 62 and a 55 in the regulation.
I
My
know.
bigger point is we should be clear. A, if you're not comfortable having the 55 at 80%, then only do the 62. Now, if you have both already, then I think we clearly state what each one is
Right.
because you want to comply with federal fair
Exactly.
housing.
Right.
So,
So we got like 3 or 4 different definitions going on right now.
right. So,
Or titles, I should
right,
say.
right. And that gets to then something we will probably do in the final version here. And if you notice, I threw in top of page 19, I threw in a diagram for lots as a placeholder. I need to make a new diagram for you because you guys define through lots, and my existing diagram doesn't show what a through lot is. But we can use things like diagrams to help better convey what definitions are. But in that case also, from a layout perspective, we could now put like the diagram on the left side and put all your lot definitions in a text box next to them on the right-hand side. My point then being, we could then take, rather than having everything alphabetical, we could take all your definitions that relate to senior housing, age-restricted housing, independent living, assisted living. We can do a specific section that has all those definitions together. So in that final formatting, we can think about how we present things differently. And when you pull all those definitions into one place, it then also helps with just kind of differentiating and understanding. You're not flipping through, the definitions to try and find the independent living versus the age restricted versus the whatever. So,
Well, one of the goals is for the person that wants to develop to make, not just for us, to make them come in and be able to look at something and understand it.
And that's all getting at, that final formatting is getting at having a more user-friendly reg.
Right.
So that when people go to find a definition, they find all those definitions rather than just one of them and so forth.
Yep.
So,
Another place I saw you could use that is the open space. We have open space.
Yeah,
We have restricted and passive, and it's like
yeah, and actually, I'm going to push you guys on those.
ABC.
When we get to the second round and I group things together, the next round, I'm going to push you on those open space definitions. I'm not sure a lot of them are actually needed, but I need to think through them a bit more.
I actually don't think it's accurate either. I mean, open space is typically with a subdivision, dedicated open space. This just says basically anything that isn't built on is open space.
Right.
So
And
that's misleading.
The world of open space. Also, in the context of open space is typically a subdivision requirement. You may have a provision that says in zoning, open space needs to be required. And then just kind of some of those definitions, like I think one of them was passive open space or something. There's no regulatory purpose to it. There's no provision that speaks of it, and it's just kind of out there. So I think those need some cleaning up.
Then if I'm not mistaken, one of our open space discussion revolves around a developer deeding the open space over to the town. And then there's issues where the town, then it goes to the council, I believe, and they may say, well, we really don't want that land. It's not really something we're going to be able to do anything with or write it. So there's another component to that as well.
But in some ways, none of that falls under this idea of these definitions that you guys are presenting here in the regs. You may need some clarity on that, deeded open space or the conveyance of it to the town and how that occurs. You may need a regulatory provision that discusses that better, but you don't necessarily need definitions of 5 different kinds of open space.
We do need something to take care of that deeded or open space or conveyance. I don't think we really have anything. It's always like we work on it. It's always like a work in progress when we do it.
Right. So once again, another thing we
I think we just didn't we move that Raffia Road where they put that the building up, the dollar store. I think we moved the deeded open space to a better location. That was more suitable. It was in one spot that wasn't right, and then we moved it over. That's what I mean. Something that we can get our arms around. That
was deeded open space.
Yeah, but we moved it to the space closer to the school.
Right.
Yeah, where it was on a hill, I think, initially.
So then, there's your planned senior life community. You guys define retail food establishment. I added or service because you also use the phrase retail food service elsewhere in the regulations. That adding or service was a simple way to clarify that. Once again, I think we could have a breakout section of defining kinds of restaurants. Like we could have a section that's generically food service, and then what is fast food, what is, fast casual, what is whatever, to better clarify the kinds of restaurants.
But do we really need to? Because that's done through the health department.
So some communities do differentiate in their commercial zones what types of restaurants can be allowed where. Once again, if this isn't an issue or whatever, we can stay very basic and not do multiple definitions. So it's just kind of a way of thinking about it.
Think so. Okay, thank you.
You guys have a definition for rooming house, but you also have a definition for boarding houses.
There's a difference.
Which has actually been an issue of late,
Okay.
trying to figure out the difference.
There's
And
a difference. A boarding house, they provide breakfast or some form of meal service. In a rooming house, you don't. And
That
we
idea
have
of
both.
room and board. Board
Room,
is
you
the
rent the room.
additional
You
service.
just get a room.
Right.
In a boarding house, you
You
get
get more.
some kind of meal,
Right.
whether it be breakfast or dinner. But
Right.
there's some, I looked all this stuff up. Because we have both in town.
You do. Wow.
Right, but they need to be differentiated. So, for instance, we had recently somebody coming in and they wanted to have a boarding house for farm workers, migrant farm workers, and we were having a hard time defining this. And is there a time frame or not? Is it supposed to be?
I would
There's a
then.
time frame. I can't remember. I think it's 6 months. And then boarding is, they provide some meal, where rooming, they don't.
See, I
And it's 6 months.
I would then for
So-
farm use, I would consider a different narrative, like,
Seasonal?
The
Seasonal
application
housing.
or
Yeah.
the request came in under those two definitions.
Probably because there wasn't anything else. but-
Because we don't have anything else, so I think that we
Seasonal
need to
farming,
provide
yes.
that.
Seasonal housing or seasonal dormitories.
We do have seasonal employees that come into our
Right,
community
right.
now that
Yep.
are boarded in bunkhouses. We
Right.
have them now.
Right. And
But how do you define it and where?
How did they get built? I don't know.
So this is
probably
the issue. is
pre-existed
We don't
regs.
have that definition.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know we had them in East Windsor. I'm not sure we had them defined, but we had them.
This goes back.
And we have them here. I don't
Right.
think
We
that
do
they're
have it.
defined, though, and there was somebody
Right.
requesting.
Right.
Just real quick, I'll go back
we
to
do
cellar
this?
and basement. I think cellar was where you stored food and kept preserved and stored.
Yes.
Basement is underneath the, I think.
For storage
storage
or
of-
living space. It can be.
Cellar was to keep food in, I think, and
Right.
store in a cold place, like Johnny Salamis. They go in a cellar.
Okay,
So actually in that section that says, for definitions, you go to the subdivision, then building code, and then so forth, I think I'm going to add a line that we go to Linda since she's looked up all of them.
because I was reading these and I'm like, what's the difference between a rooming house and a boarding house? So what do? Is I look it up because I didn't, and
Yep.
then the cellar and basement.
Now she's retired, so it's,
No, I would have done that even working. I would have done that. So I just curious, like, how did these come out?
Yeah. Okay. We will look at that. I threw in a placeholder for a diagram on setbacks. Once again, I think all those things like lots and setbacks and so forth can be clustered together in a section with nice diagrams that actually show, what they are in addition to just speaking to them. That phrase, that a picture's worth 1,000 words, I think works really well in this context. So you guys have a definition, I believe, for outdoor display. You have a definition for sidewalk sales. And beyond kind of your definition, you don't appear to have any substantial regulatory provisions on them. I have a really good outdoor display and sales provision that I think maybe we should consider as an addition to the site development standards section, and then drag those definitions into this section.
I think that would be helpful. And, there's, a question, do you want to promote sidewalk sales? Do you want to not promote them? I mean, to me, they are an attraction to a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's an attraction for the business, but then you also have to worry about clutter and safety. So, and enough room on the sidewalk
We
for,
don't see a lot of them anymore, but pre-urban renewal, there was sidewalk sale every year, and all downtown, that was a big sidewalk sale. But if we ever bring it back to mixed use, but where would you have a sidewalk sale now?
I think the mall used to have them
mall had 'em.
inside the mall.
That's
used
right, they
to do
did,
it
Every
yeah.
inside the mall.
But we had them, remember down here, it was a
Business.
Yeah.
whole week.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what this outdoor provision conceptualizes. It can be anything from like the gas stations that like to put things like motor oil and window washing liquid outside. And you'll never stop that, so why not just have a regulation that manages it, but at the same time allowing a retailer to actually have outdoor displays.
Yeah.
So if you're in a strip plaza
Maybe-
and you want to have stuff on your sidewalk and your lease allows you to, then why not?
yeah, maybe make a percentage of the sidewalk or something like that. Just, put a maximum area or whatever, or a percentage of your store outside, or, so, I don't know does anybody have a comment on that? I mean, again, your comments will help guide us do our research.
So you're talking in the strip mall setting?
Yeah, strip malls. So like the fabric store over by Home Depot.
They always have.
They always have
out there.
something outside.
Yeah.
Ocean State Job Lot, they always have some sort of plants outside and, or whatever, Home Depot. So, I mean, so basically all the stores are doing it. So do you want to regulate it, or you just want to just let it happen? Or do you want to,
Well, then they have to
or
come
do you
in
want
for a
to not
regu-
allow
We don't
it?
want to make more regulations if they're doing it. Why do we want to make them come in and
But we
fill out an
don't-
application?
I don't think we've really ever had a big
No,
issue with it.
But so far, we haven't, because all of the people that are doing it in a
Right.
orderly manner. But there will be someone at some time and just will spill out and not care.
Which is why we have regulations.
That's why we have regulations, so we have to think about it, and if done.
And
you've got
laws.
Something that you've
Yep.
already,
Yep.
we could entertain that,
Yep.
so, yeah.
Could you do it as a guideline?
Yeah, it's a
Not,
guide.
not requiring somebody to come in and pay a fee and an application every year.
Right, you
Yeah,
don't want
just a guideline where,
No, we don't want that.
if for some reason they take over half of their parking spaces,
Yeah, right.
we could go out and say, this isn't permitted like
The
this.
zoning officer has something to.
Right, and the zoning
Yeah.
officer needs
Yeah.
something
That's fine.
so that he
Right.
can say, oh, no, look, you,
Well, there's a safety component there too.
right.
Right.
But I wouldn't want to see people have to come in here every year and fill out an application and pay a fee.
They would, no, like.
Well, I don't want it to go there. I'm just voicing my opinion.
Yep.
If we're gonna,
No, it wouldn't be a permanent. The way my thing's drafted, it's about kind of just managing it as accessory uses on a site. And so there's no additional permitting or requirements. It's just kind of, the displays have to be tidy. They can't block access, egress, sidewalks, So
Crosswalks.
forth, yeah, so forth and so on. So,
that's good.
all right. I'll dust that
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, for sure. Trip and fall hazards.
Wireless communication facilities and telecommunication towers.
You guys have a definition for transfer stations, but it doesn't appear in the regs. There's another one of those.
That's another one of those, yeah.
I believe on a comment from staff, Lori, which was probably Georgie, I could be wrong, I updated the street definition. It's not very different than your existing definition, but I think it may solve what some of the issues may have been. So that's something I'll discuss with you guys.
We might want to look at that again.
Yeah. Definition added for veterinarian,
We've got animal hospital clinic.
and I think that was changed to veterinary hospital.
So we had, we've always had a veterinary hospital or care, I forget how it's worded, but we now have a veterinary clinic where there's no housing of animals, and that's now permitted in like the lower BL zone.
Oh, and you do have animal hospital.
Yeah.
I missed that. Okay, I'm gonna have to check those. Okay.
Yeah, we had animal hospitals, kennels, and veterinary offices.
Right.
And so we now allow the veterinary offices or clinics just by site plan or special permit in more zones.
Okay,
So,
I'll check those.
so they've been called out separately now.
I deleted your visitor information booth. I can't tell you when the first time was in my life that I saw that in your regulations, but I'm guessing it was like 15 years ago. And I remember
They built them all.
that's what I'm assuming, but I remember just chuckling, being like, "What is that?" And just, I believe it's listed as a primary use, so like you could just apply for a visitor information booth someplace. So
No, it's only permitted in the BR zone. That's it.
right, but on its own.
But
On
it
its
was
own.
for
So you
it
could
was in
just-
the first mall when they built the very first one.
Well, we just got redesignated by the governor
And-
as the gateway to Connecticut. He just 2 weeks ago, so maybe we may have a state visiting center. I don't know, but you were there, Lori, right? We got redesignated.
was.
Right.
We are now the gateway to
Gateway to
Connecticut. Yes, we are.
Connecticut.
So we may have a visitor center.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we need
And it's
that.
not even an election year for the governor. And he said that. So I'm very happy.
Your walkable neighborhoods definition.
That was put in because we had a study done for the Thompsonville area.
Right.
And this gentleman came in and this whole big thing about walkable neighborhoods
Yep.
and being able to connect the different parts of towns with sidewalks to make it more walkable.
So was this part of Complete Streets?
I don't know, I can't remember.
Or
what
was this,
study it
was this a gentleman that came in from the national guy that comes in and does walk studies for
Yeah.
all the municipalities?
and he walked around
Was
the
it
town.
Jim,
I
Jeff?
can't remember his name, and I don't remember the name of the study, but
Jeff Speck?
it was a big deal.
I can't remember his name,
Real
but
big deal, and
So
I think we just need to deal
walkable
with,
neighborhoods are great. It's a great planning thing. I just, when I read this definition and I see it, it's like, it has no regulatory purpose. So I just felt like it's just hanging out there, really doing nothing in your zoning regs. That being said, is we update other sections of the regulations, and if we're talking about mixed use and so forth, I think it makes sense to have narrative about walkability or walkable neighborhoods within a mixed use provision, or talk about, the connection of sidewalks between commercial areas and residential areas
We
and
have
so
that now.
forth.
We're making everybody put sidewalks in.
Yeah. So from provision sections, having narratives around those specific things makes sense to me. From the definition section, it
Yeah.
doesn't.
and it fits
So-
into the Complete Streets as well, so,
Yeah.
so we could definitely,
And how about?
I don't think we need a
walk
definition
bridges?
for
Does
it.
it include
Right.
walk bridges? Remember we heard about walk bridges?
yes,
The Flower Bridge.
Yeah.
but no,
It's coming.
you know, it was this big study and the town's,
Yeah.
Not another study.
so it was, but the guy walked around all the neighborhoods in all the parts of town,
Okay.
and that was how that got there.
Okay.
That's all.
We'll see if we can find any walk studies that have been performed that might be in our
Gotta be
drives. You
somewhere.
never know.
Well, under TIF, we have to connect them all to downtown.
Yep.
So under TIF, we
Something
we
like
have to connect the mall area to the downtown area, so we make sure we have to have good walking infrastructure.
So, in the next article, Article 3, in some ways, that first page, there's not much in the way of changes other than some formatting, I think. The lot of records section, 3.20.2.
3.20.2.
Needs to be fixed.
It needs to be fixed, but I need to sit down and talk with you and Georgie about it and try and figure some stuff out.
I think a lot of this was written when Pheasant Hill was being built.
What's Pheasant Hill? I
Is
need
a-
reference.
It's a planned development.
Okay.
The Weymouth Road?
Yes.
Yeah.
So a lot of that was written for that
Okay.
type of development.
I feel in some way this whole provision is like so far in the weeds that it's probably creating more pain than actually achieving anything meaningful. So
I would concur with that, and then reading it over and over after time, you kind of get a little convoluted. It's like, which one are we talking about?
yeah,
So I think, yeah, you and Georgie and I should sit down and talk about that.
Yeah.
I think item D needs some,
Yeah.
something that doesn't seem right.
item E.
Yeah.
Well, so that is, and I've questioned that in many towns. I don't know where the statutory authority of the town has to merge lots just because they're common ownership and they're non-conforming.
There is case law on that. I'll have to go back and look, but that's like the only rational statement in all this. It's just that is a provision that
is
you
a provision.
commonly
Yeah,
see. It's
that's
called
right.
the merger provision. That two non-conforming lots, or one conforming and one not. No, two non-conforming lots that are adjacent under the same ownership from zoning shall be considered merged. And it's the whole idea of the intent of zoning is to get rid of nonconformities.
Right.
So if you own both those lots and they're both nonconforming, but merged, they actually create a conforming lot, then that meets with the intent of zoning to eliminate nonconformings. That's the one provision that makes a lot of sense out of all of this. But yeah, I don't know where.
But then we have a application for separation of merged lots because they were originally legal lots of record
Right. That's the
and
point.
buildable lots.
Right.
So if they get merged by
the provision.
the town
They're not non-conforming
assessor,
based upon the owner. They're non-conforming based upon the zoning changes, or, they were
Right.
lots of record, 100 years ago, per
Right.
se. So if somebody owns a house right now and buys the lot next door to them, and that lot is or was a lot of record, but it's non-conforming, and now it's automatically merged with that other lot. I don't agree with that.
I can
I just
understand
don't-
that.
If it was sold to somebody else, it would still be a lot of record to somebody
And
else.
still buildable.
Because the neighbor bought it,
Yeah.
joins it, it becomes merged.
Well, and I think, the view of nonconformities and current case law has changed. In the past, it was very strictly, we don't want nonconforming anything. We want everything to conform. And now it's like, if you've got a nonconforming lot, basically allowed to go back to what the regulations were at the time of its creation. So, and then, right now we have, most of our subdivisions are now zoned 33,000 square feet, and most of them were developed as 12,000 and 17,000, but yet we're making them non-conforming because we upzoned the properties. So it becomes a huge issue in town.
Question for Lori. Oh, we're looking under 3.20.2. We spoke a couple of times about the Thompsonville lots, and the B talks about the 5,000 square foot lots. So remember we talked about, is there anything prohibiting merging even different owners and one owner buying more than one property, 5 properties, and merging them?
They can do that if they
Yeah, they have
want.
every right to do that.
But if he doesn't want, he
Right, he doesn't.
doesn't have
Right,
to.
but this language, B, does not prohibit that,
So,
right? B?
I'm,
right, it doesn't prohibit
It does not prohibit.
no, it does not
Right.
prohibit it.
Okay.
Yep.
Because it's specific, that size is specific to a lot of the lot sizes down here.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to be blunt with you guys.
Well, look out, Don's being blunt.
Yeah. Well, because we've been looking at the non-conforming issues with those residential upzones. Through the planning, through the POCD process, through discussions with Frank, through other means, constant frustration with properties in Thompsonville. I truly believe there's a correlation between non-conforming restrictiveness of zoning and a tendency for poor property maintenance and disinvestment. Because if the owner can't get what they need, then they're less likely to invest and so forth. This is my whole thing. When I arrive in this section of your regulations, Article 3, every provision is over the top. It's just like trying to do so much. Whether it's the lot of record or whether it's the, where is it? The accessory buildings, or whether it's the commercial vehicles. Like, my God, you have 2 pages of commercial vehicles. I deleted half of that.
There's a reason for that.
Understood.
Yeah.
Let me finish, though. So everything is like so over the top in this section. And then on top of it, most of it comes back to you guys for special permits, which then ends up being probably a fair portion of your agendas, I would assume. So and then your non-conforming section, I think we could probably solve those upzones by just solving the poorly written non-conforming section.
Perhaps.
So I would like to ask you guys to allow me to, let me rewrite section 3. I'm not going to do it in here in all the messiness. Let me rewrite section 3 in a separate document and give it to you and say, are you willing to do this moving forward? Because I think we can solve a lot of the problems that are driving you guys nuts, or at least driving your staff nuts. I don't know if they drive you nuts. They're driving your staff nuts.
It rolls downhill.
I think
if
part of that problem was when they rezoned everything from R17
Right,
and
upzoned.
R12.
Upzoned,
And just to R33, and then it kind of like excluded everything.
Right. But then on top of it, so that's part of the problem. But then on top of it, you have a very poorly written non-conforming use section. And then you have a very convoluted lot of records section. All of those things are actually stacking on to each other. So the upzoning creates a non-conforming issue. That then kicks it to the non-conforming provisions that are further creating an issue. And then if the lots aren't non-conforming, they're probably lots of record. And they
Which may or may not have been merged.
Right. So this whole section,
Have at it.
I'll be honest, is
Absolutely,
just
I think
hideous.
so.
Okay.
I agree.
Let me just gut it and start from scratch.
Then we'll
Figure
again-
out what to do.
and I'll look up the words for you.
And again, Don, that makes the person coming in the door to her office able to look at that and understand it.
Yeah.
Not because
I do this
if you're
for,
like
I do
getting
this for
crazy.
a living and I can't understand.
That's what I was just going to say.
I mean, there are people living in R12 or R17,000 square foot lots that need a special permit to do a garage addition. That's how crazy this is.
Yeah.
It just shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't
So-
be that hard to put in a garage or a deck or a shed.
Right.
All right.
Yep.
Okay.
I think the citizens
Have
will
at it.
appreciate it.
Then let's stop there.
All right.
I'll do a rewrite on section
Now,
3
let's
from
look at
scratch.
your calendar
Yep.
so that we can all, because we all kind of said all these dates that Lori gave us are like, yeah, okay, fine.
Yep.
Yeah, so those were all
No, I didn't.
possible dates that we could
They
have a
one.
meeting.
Right.
Now we need to narrow it down to the dates that we actually
So-
want to have a meeting.
Yep. So this is what I did. I went through with what works best for me, if you don't mind that. So kind of, I gave her the span of dates, and now I've gone in and looked at.
So
You guys have said yes to these
I
dates.
plugged your
January.
dates. Whatever you gave her is what I plugged in.
Right. So I'm using the same dates as you guys. I'm just gonna identify the ones that I want to move forward with, and there'll be
Okay.
fewer than the total.
Right.
So October 29th goes away because that's next week, and we're just not turning around anything for you that quickly.
All right.
So then Tuesday the 12th should be our next work session
Yep.
of November.
Okay.
And
to
then
get a time because the way it was between 5:30 and 6:30.
Oh,
Six?
we're gonna
Okay.
do 6.
All right,
I
we're
know-
going to change
I know
it.
that,
All going to be 6?
Chris
Yes.
has a problem with
Okay.
that because he's actually on ag
No, that's fine.
conservation, but, and we're gonna have to move you anyway, so.
Well, so for December, I'm picking the Thursday, the 12th.
Is there only that one in November then?
Yeah, just that
19th.
one
We
in
didn't have the
November.
19th?
I got the 19th, I got the 19th.
19th doesn't work for me.
Okay.
All right, delete.
Apologies.
All right, hang on.
Well, and the 19th is actually a meeting that night.
It's a Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday night.
Oh, are we in
Of
December?
For November. We
Oh,
jumped to
you're still in
November.
November. I thought we went to December.
No, we're deleting the 19th then, right?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
delete.
Well, we're not deleting it, we're just not using it.
yeah, so I'm conflicted that night, my apologies. So then December 12th, so that's a Thursday night, that shouldn't conflict with conservation.
Yep, we have that in here.
And you guys said we're doing 6 o'clock on these, that would be great.
Yeah.
So you're doing the 12th, yes?
Yep,
Not the
December
10th.
12th,
Not the 10th.
correct.
I got the 10th in here.
Okay, let me check.
It would be easier for getting the room if we did it on the 12th.
Yeah, and actually, I'm conflicted out the 10th, that's why I
Take the
didn't
10th
We're
choose it.
both in there.
So the 12th.
Delete it. I'd be more than happy to.
So we're not doing it then.
Nope,
Okay.
gone.
And then we could do the 8th and the 15th in January.
Okay.
8th is already in there, and the 15th is already in there. For both
Yep.
Wednesdays, yep.
Yep,
And we should be at the point there that we're going to be doing fine tuning,
yeah,
hopefully.
yeah.
Okay, and I'm tied up to 15th.
The 14th still there?
No,
14th's coming out?
we're going to use the 8th and the 15th
8th, the 15th.
Take the
of
14th out.
January.
So it'll be November 12th,
Hang on, let's go back.
Yep,
December 12th,
yep,
and then January 8th and
Yep.
January 15th
yep.
at
Yep.
6 o'clock. And Lori, you're going to let us know the
Yep.
rooms.
Yep. It should all be the Skidco, but there's just that one Tuesday one that we have to move ag.
How
and con.
about January 21st, which is in there.
That's in there too.
Right.
I didn't pick up on that.
It was a question mark.
Yep, there's
It was
question
just,
marks next
it
to it.
was so, getting so close to the Christmas holiday, I was kind of like, I'm not sure if people will be here.
The old delete button on that too?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was January, right?
That was
20?
January.
Yeah, January 21st.
Yeah.
So,
And then that's it. All right, so
And,
Well, that's
and we
okay.
can
We should
reassess at the 8th, you know, the 8th of January. We can kind of reassess if we need future dates moving out from there.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
thinking, though, we might want to schedule some February dates because it's
Okay.
far enough in advance. And I didn't give the February schedule, so if you could let me know your February schedule.
So,
We plan on December 12th making February date.
Well, because the rooms and/or people's agendas may already be booked.
so why don't I just, so you can check meetings? Or do we have them here on this list, or is it possible it's changed?
We don't have nothing in February yet.
What, for February?
So, I'm gonna say
I
Fe-
didn't put February in yet.
So February 4th, 5th, and 6th could work for me. 11th, 12th, or 13th could work for me. If you want to book one on one week and one on the next week into a room, then we
Okay.
can go with that.
Okay,
So whatever you have for availability,
okay.
and that way we have them.
You gotta let us know on those, right, Lori?
So that's a Tuesday, Wednesday,
Thursday,
Thursday
Tuesday,
for both of
Wednesday,
them?
the
the following,
13th
so.
yeah, 13th is our meeting,
I know this is
so
workshops.
What month are you in?
Okay.
February.
When we get to February, will there be capability to remote in?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Look, I'll be in Florida, so, but,
Not Italy?
no, Italy's, it's July. I just booked my tickets today. Wedding. Wedding in
Oh,
July.
you gotta go for the wedding.
Yeah, so we should be able to remote.
So February, what are we talking
Okay.
about February?
She's gonna let us know.
February
Perfect.
4th, 5th, 6th, or 11 and 12.
Sorry that I didn't even realize it.
I'll have the
So February 4th, 5th, 6th, or the 12th?
Yeah.
The Google Docs is great in one way, and then it's frustrating in another way. Yeah. So, but I can do it.
Okay,
So I'll
Sounds
get
like
the
another
document
nice
to you.
Yeah.
that's fine.
Although it probably doesn't seem like that we did a lot, we actually did. We got a lot accomplished, and we got guidance from you, and that's very helpful.
Is this the painful part of the
This is.
This is the painful part.
This is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
And to be honest with you guys, you just made life a lot easier by giving me the opportunity to rewrite section 3.
Well, you're the professional. You're a doctor. I mean, we hired you. It's like,
Then go from
you
there.
got, yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Thank you
Yes,
guys.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this one we could really
All
get rid of, right?
Yep, no. Keep it, you might have notes on it that you want to use, so you never throw anything away.
I don't know, but this is the one that didn't come out.
At least not any of these.
Yeah, I don't want a lot of paper.
Do what you want.
Is it-
Okay, let's move, do we need a recess?
No,
Do we need a recess?
What more do we have?
Okay. You're all set, you don't need a break? You good? Okay, all right. All right, all right, we're gonna move on.
12.
Yeah, we're gonna go to, directors,
Good night, thank you.
Director's report. So, Lori, what do you got for us?
All right. So I think that you all know that we had the DPRAT, the Design and Preservation Rapid Assistance Program this week, where we had 10 professional planners from throughout the United States come in and focus on Thompsonville and you know, what are, you know, kind of, you know, what can we do with all of the plans and studies that we've had, and where do we go next? So they really focused on infrastructure and parking, creation of a central business district in Thompsonville, connection to the riverfront, Main Street, and then also what everybody seems to be against is the closing of the Asnuntuck underpass. So They gave a presentation on Monday. It's on our planning and zoning website if you want the link, so you could watch it. Otherwise, just Google it on YouTube. It was a really fun and crazy and very long 2 days of working with these people. They did both days full-time. Staff kind of helped all day on the first day, and the second day it was kind of let them do their job. But they had it was a lot of fun, and I think that this is really going to be great ideas for the impetus to move forward in Thompsonville and utilize the plans that we've already have in place. The ultimate is that they should have a guidelines and an idea book by February for us to use. So we'll keep you informed as the process moves forward with that. Let's see, there's really not that much. We have like no applications coming in, which is a good thing for staff because we could work on the regulations without too much other stuff. So that's a good thing. That's really the big things right now. Just so the public knows, the next meeting, November 7th, has been canceled, and we've rescheduled a special meeting for November 14th as a special meeting. There was a typo on the back of our agenda saying, I think it said November 24th instead of the 14th, so as our next meeting. So
14th?
Yep, it's the 14th. So the Thursday, November 14th, we'll have a special meeting in lieu of the November 7th meeting, which is canceled. And thank you very much for allowing us to do that, so staff could go to the
I know all about
sessions
those
and-
networking things.
Yeah, you know what? It's surprising how much you actually do learn.
when you're networking.
And speaking with the local planners, especially this one, because it's not national, it's basically
good.
just Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. And so we really have a lot in common with all the planners there, so. So that's it for
Okay,
that.
all right, thank you. Commissioners' correspondence. Ken?
Yeah, I just had one thing. I had a conversation with Linda about the auxiliary, the ADUs, okay? And we were looking to see what kind of requests, I was curious about seeing what kind of requests were coming in, because I think Georgie had mentioned at the last meeting there were several requests that had to be turned down because they were different than what we would allow. And just curious of finding out what that is. And I think you guys were going to come up with a report. I just wanted to know.
We're going to try, but like I said, this last week, basically, we were kind of inundated with
Yeah,
the
I'm
deep
just,
prep. But
you know,
we'll
just
we'll
bringing it
we'll
up, you
get
know,
them
so
to
we can
you.
have-
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yep, thank you.
Anybody else? I just have one thing. Pheasant Hill, what's going on with that? Are they coming in with a new site plan? What are they doing?
George, are you still there? Did we hear back from the homeowners association president?
So yes, we're still working on scheduling a meeting with them.
You haven't had your meeting.
It's hard because the new president, he's a sole volunteer and he works during the day, so he has to schedule weeks out to take off time from work. So we've been trying to cater to him since he is like the only member left on the HOA.
Oh, all right. Okay, anybody else? Okay, we're moving on to other business. CGS 824 referral. Laurie?
Yeah, CGS 8-24 referral discontinuance of Enfield Terrace and Enfield Terrace extension.
Right, so this is in your packet. So this is Enfield Terrace and Enfield Terrace extension, which is where the Enfield Housing Authority has a lot of little tiny houses, and they have approval to, I'm sorry, my mic's not on. They have approval to demolish those little houses and put in some big multifamily complexes. They have requested the town to let them have the roads that are involved with their development, because they'd rather just maintain them themselves, and the town is in favor of this. So do you want me to read the little sections here?
No, I
That-
don't think it's necessary.
Okay. So
question.
basically, everybody's in favor of this, including town manager and the Public Works Department. And they've already had these conversations, but because it's a discontinuance of a road, we need to come here for an 824 referral to refer back to town council.
And if you had watched these meetings when they came in, this is going to be quite a nice facility.
gonna be lovely.
that they're going to be building.
It really is.
So, yes, Frank?
The town has a pumping station back there. They're going to maintain an easement to that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. John?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to send a positive referral to the town council for the discontinuance of Enfield Terrace and Enfield Terrace Extension.
Second.
Any questions, concerns? All in favor?
All right?
Aye. Okay, PA 23-142.
So this is one of those public acts that we have requirements to make modifications of our regulations. This came about over a year ago, and we had to make, we had to respond saying what we were going to change. This is about, sorry, the child and family daycares that we were talking about earlier, we can't treat them any differently than we do with a residential house. So this public act basically regulates the fact that we don't treat them different. We can't require special use permits. We can't, they basically are to be treated basically with no regulation because they're regulated by the state. So we have to take out things like any reference to, you know, if it's going to affect the character of the local area. We have to make sure that they're by right in residential zones and things about like that. I'm sorry. So we were supposed to have updated our regulations by taking these phrases out and making sure that their special use permits weren't done. We responded to the state saying we would do so by May, and then we started talking about working on the regulations. I just said, so basically we just figured we would just make sure that the commission knows that we're not supposed to be doing this, and these applications haven't come in, so it hasn't been an issue. But should they come in, we would advise you to not require the special use permit because the Public Act requires that we cannot.
Okay.
So this is just saying that we're going to do what we said we were going to do by May, but incorporate it in with our massive cover-to-cover zoning regulation. And there is a motion on the back.
Mr.
For you.
Secretary?
Yeah, I got a quick question
Yeah.
to Lori through the chair. The second portion of the motion, is that being read in as well?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, because I want the state to understand that we understand what the ramifications are here.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Frank.
So it says family child care home or group child care home.
Yep.
What's the difference? Is it a group home or is it?
It's any one
just
of
for
the
children?
So we were just discussing the fact that we need to qualify the definitions of all of these because they're kind of funky in our definitions. I don't know specifically the difference between a group home and a family care, but it's basically child care, family care, or group, and I think the group actually stays in the residence as well, so.
Yeah, it's just confusing whether it's a
Yeah.
group of children or a group home.
It's a group of any of them, children, family, or a group of adults.
Good boy.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to move staff recommendations to the town manager for a report to OPM regarding required modifications to the Enfield zoning regulations in order to comply with PA 23-142. Said study and modification shall be accomplished with the cover-to-cover rewrite of the zoning regulations, which is anticipated to be finalized before the end of the first quarter of 2025. It is understood that certain words, phrases, and requirements for special permits as referenced in PA 23-142 shall be utilized.
Shall not be utilized.
Shall not be utilized.
Right.
Sorry.
Second.
Okay, any comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Very much.
you don't have any applications, you said, at this time?
We don't.
And so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Who got that
Aye.
second?
All
Frank.
right, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Lori.
Time
And
is
Georgie for chiming in.
9:35. 9:35. Good night, Georgie. Drive safe.